Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avocet Communications and host of StrategyCast. Join me and my guests, innovators, disruptors, and visionaries as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies that help you transform, scale, and grow your brand. I have a fantastic episode for you today. Joining me is Jennifer Clemente, a leading voice in tech-driven marketing strategies. With a background in both technology and marketing, Jen talks to us about how AI tools are transforming marketing teams of all sizes. She walks us through how to foster a culture of encouragement, manage AI tools effectively, and ensure the ethical use of AI. She also shares real-world examples from saving resources to enhancing brand authenticity. Get ready for a deep dive into the AI strategies every business leader should know. And don't forget to check out the most recent issue of the StrategyCast newsletter on StrategyCast.com. Just like this episode, it's full of inspiration and a ton of ideas that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to StrategyCast. I am so excited to have Jen Clemente join the show today. We are talking all things AI for small, nimble marketing teams, for large teams, for startup businesses. You won't want to miss this show because Jen is the guru when it comes to implementation of all things AI. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me today.
I tell you, Jen, you've got such a wicked background when it comes to this sort of stuff and really integrated marketing comms in general. Tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Oh my gosh. Well, it really started in early childhood when I was gifted a 2XL robot for Christmas. So no, really, I was never afraid of technology. I always thought it was really cool. And my father worked at Motorola, so he was always, sneaking little devices my way to kind of, I think, get me really comfortable with, devices of all sorts. And then my stepfather was, ended up, he had a background in music marketing. So he worked with the Beatles as the marketing director for Apple Records.
My gosh. Okay. That has never happened on this show.
Yeah, so you'd say I had a really interesting background with a lot of great influences. So I had, technology from my father, and then my stepfather was a marketing guru and a writer. He was an author of several best-selling novels. My mother was an entrepreneur and a really multidisciplinary thinker and very spiritual. So with that in my background, I think I was just really lucky to have good influences. So when I was in college, early signs of the internet were creeping around. And so I was hanging out with the nerds, and we all started pinging each other and using the local network and things. And then that ended up becoming like one of the first colleges to adopt an Apple networking system.
Yeah.
So we had local community, user groups and things online. And so that just exploded. So when I had a chance to spend 6 months in Eastern and Central Europe, right after the fall of the wall, of course, my main topic was how is technology accelerating these changes?
Right.
So I was really there just peering in, interviewing people, acting like a bit of like an anthropologist, looking at how people were using technology and especially journalists, getting out information when they were, trying to circumvent state control. So that led me into being a journalist myself and covering technology. And so on and on it went. But I was also covering just the changes overall, the economic impact to people, the privatization of telecom, the war and its sort of ancillary impact on communities. And so there's just a lot going on. But my passion was technology, and my biggest passion was internet and how it could really help people kind of get, break out of their silos, break out of any oppressive system and just get reach out to the early nirvana of the internet, right? It's going to just change the world.
And it's interesting. A lot of people at that time did not believe it was, though. We were the first agency in the state of Colorado to give a seminar. It's funny, it's all webinar now, although we do have seminars too. But nonetheless, it was a seminar. We invited 250 marketing communications directors to, about 150 showed up. We introduced them to this thing called the World Wide Web and email. And a poll during the seminar told us that 10% of people thought that email would become a mainstream communication methodology, and 20% believed that that the web would become a mainstream communication methodology. Look at where we are today.
Incredible.
I know.
Incredible.
So
you've had a chance to really be, watch the whole thing track as well. So yeah, I think, once for folks that like us, it's especially in marketing, it's just become this interesting evolution, of course. And so I feel like I don't feel like there's a lot of people in marketing who really aren't sort of excited about this and haven't been sort of tracking it.
Or they're not in marketing anymore, right? I take a look at the number of agencies during the quote unquote digital revolution where our go-to-market strategies were changed by the technology, and those that were not adapting, are long gone. And so you have to adapt. You have to be a part of it, which is really what we're going to talk about today is how AI, we must be adapting to it as marketers. We must be using it to become smarter, to become more robust, to be utilizing data that can help us do better things in the market. And how we get there and how we not listen to everything that's said around us about the elimination of jobs and so on and so forth is what is key, because that's not going to happen, because we're all very, very wise when it comes to interpretation of data, which is why we're still doing what we're doing. And that is key.
Right. Well, I mean, we've been adapting to technology since its beginnings, right? And we're still here.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember when we were having this conversation about AI and its impact on the global communications department at my last employer, VMware, and that was exactly the thought. Like, we're still here. We've been evolving through technology for the last 20 some years, and this is just another step, right? Yeah. This is just another piece of it.
Yeah. So what we really hope your takeaway today is going to be from this show is how, again, the marketing teams, the tech startups, any startup can use AI strategically to ensure you're meeting the needs of all your audiences, from investors to public sector buyers, quite frankly. While everyone looks at this as a way to write quick copy, but all that copy is going to sound like everyone else as well. We're really going to try to steer you away from that kind of thinking and focus on strategy, on data points, and what you can really gain from that.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound good. And it's interesting because when I was teaching this course, this AI for Communicators course, I'd say about 95% of the students were coming from healthcare industries, from public sector, from industries that were really not embracing AI. And so the challenge and the need and the passion of the students was, how do I get my organization on board?
Right.
Right. And that was really the key challenge. How do I convince them that this isn't going to, compromise our IP or damage our brand reputation, or, all of that. So we had to start with that. How do you choose the right tool for the job? So the conversation was like, enterprise grade AI tools, start with those. Like, do not, if you're going to experiment with, the open AIs of the world, go ahead and experiment, but only for your own personal projects. Do not use those for anything work related. Yeah. And most of the students, shared that they could not use those anyway. Right.
Now, just very quick, what are you sharing with those enterprise teams on the best approach to have the conversation, not just the tool, about the conversation about which that AI can be viable?
I would think I think it's evident marketing teams, especially small ones, are under stress and strain. They're mighty. They do everything, but they burn out quickly. And everyone knows that the demand on the marketing team is high.
Right.
Everyone wants their fact sheet, their, talking points, their video. And so I think there's just an acknowledgement that marketing teams are working hard, very, very hard. So I think there's a natural understanding that marketing just needs tools to do their job. Marketing's always advocating for tools anyway, and it's just another tool. So in my experience, the process is writing up some business use cases, very, very tightly controlled. So we're going to use it for, these three things. We'd like to start a pilot. We'd like to try this tool for 2 weeks. We'll keep legal abreast of how we're using it. We'll even share what is AI generated copy so they can see what it looks like and they can see how it edits and we edit it and it changes. So only a shadow is left, or even very little is left over, but it's just to kind of get us started and to, save that 30% of time writing that first draft. So I think just building that rapport with your stakeholders early on. Another thing I really I found useful, especially for resistant executives who are really concerned about AI sort of replacing their voice or their expertise. 2 things. One is to build a persona based on originally drafted, say, bylines or pieces or a YouTube transcript from an executive, and then showing them how does the AI see them, and build that persona. And I think it's really interesting. Everyone wants to see, how does AI see them?
Yeah. It's interesting. We've implemented custom chat tools based on the agency's philosophy when it comes to how we approach creative development, how we approach writing. We're only using it on behalf of ourselves right now because we really want to make sure that, number one, the transparency with clients is really important, right? And we even have in our master services agreement, are we allowed to use AI or not? And here are the tools we do use. So, that's really important going back to communicating with legal. But it allows us to truly understand, to use the IP of our intellect and compare that to the IP of AI and really determine, is this a viable approach? Can it be used in the future? And then if the answer is yes, something we were talking about pre-show, what will we do to backfill some of that time and quickness? Or do we just end up doing more content? Because let's face facts, there's never enough content, right? We've got a ton of content, but if you take a look at the rules of the road, you should be pushing out 4 blogs a week, most companies, so that you've got that SEO optimization. So there's all sorts of things that I think people can do to really to prove the model, and that it can become an extension of your team, not a replacement.
Yeah, especially if you have if you have your knowledge base set up. So you have your original legally sanctioned, approved draft, your fact sheets and your talking points and, your stump speech and those things that are already, sanctioned and ready to go. And we're just talking about versioning, creating new versions of those, not creating net new content from, the vast expanses of the web, but to actually create very tightly curated pieces based on already original pieces. And so I think that's where, we lean on 2 things. One is your SMEs, the SMEs in an organization, really partnering and collaborating with folks from R&D who might have like the best communication skills, is really like working with them and creating that brand voice that's really well informed with scientific data, claims, all of that, and then using that as your foundation to build off of.
Yeah, I think that makes good sense. Going back for 1 second, I want to make sure that we provide some good advice around this, because what we're seeing is that people are talking more about the tools than what it is the tool is doing for them. So for instance, with Perplexity, we're utilizing that to do a lot of market research. We have found that it saves us time. It actually is a wonderful validation tool against a lot of areas that we may not normally be able to uncover with Google and with searches. It doesn't replace, one-on-one interviews with customers or anything like that, but it becomes very valuable for the reasons I just said. Most people are leading with, we need the tool, not what the tool is going to do for them and how it will benefit the organization.
Right. I mean, it's aggregating data and information, and then with the prompting, you're giving the context, you're asking for specifics, right? And the more specific you get, the better it is. So I think for creating those conversations, those interviews with customers, you can use a Perplexity or any AI search to really get really granular and like give me 5 recent reports on the topic that we want to drill down into, and then use the customer conversation to validate possibly some of that research and give it life, give it that sort of that voice of the customer.
And what we're doing here with collecting all that data, what we just talked about now we're building that knowledge base. And you just mentioned bringing in SMEs to help build that knowledge base. So we're building it. We've got all that great content. We're getting smarter. We're able to bring out additional details, more content. What advice do you have to our listeners today on how they manage that knowledge base?
So there's different, in an AI platform that I use, an AI tool I use, there's ways to archive, and you have your knowledge base sort of stacking up. And so then when you prompt, you can bring in the knowledge base specifically for, creating any additional content. So a lot of these tools will have them built in,
Right.
At least the 2 enterprise AI tools that I'm familiar with, which are Writer and Jasper.
Right. We just interviewed Jasper on the show, by the way, and they had incredible insights on all of that. I want to use a use case here that we are just implementing as an agency. We were in a strategy session last week, and we are working with a client on flat to slightly up customer count. And we're really trying to figure out operationally, are there issues from a marketing standpoint? Are there issues? Are there issues with product? Every department within the organization. So we did a quick scrub of, they've got 15,000 reviews on different review sites throughout the United States. And we built a custom chat that brought all those reviews in. And we are now able to ask questions to the chat and, get some fundamental feedback, like, is security and safety an issue? Well, we've only had, out of 15,000 reviews, 100 mention it. But then as we were going through that data, we thought, okay, but when was it mentioned? So this aggregated data is probably over 10, 15 years itself. So was it mentioned 10 years ago, and it hasn't been mentioned since then, so it's not an issue today. So those are ways that we're building, a different kind of knowledge base to allow us to write and to develop strategies that are far more fruitful and meaningful than a lot of the guessing work that you might get in, only having the time to review 250 reviews.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember I think when ChatGPT first came out, maybe it was like early on, maybe a year and a half ago, there was a conversation on LinkedIn about somebody who kind of did that. He sort of bypassed like research services and sort of just took a bunch of reviews and asked for strategy, prompted for strategy based on those reviews. And that's a great use case. But it sounds like you took it to a more sophisticated level by layering in, timelines and whatnot. So
yeah,
that's fantastic.
Well, we haven't even mentioned it to the client yet. It's truly in beta form because we want it to be 100%. But ultimately, we'll be able to ask this knowledge base any question, and it's going to spit out a pretty valuable answer for us.
I mean, that's like every marketer's dream, is to be able to talk to your data, right?
Oh,
that is it. That is it. One thing I found useful in my industry, where I'm in quantum, I was in AI for many years and cloud, and now I'm in quantum and quantum cloud. And as you can guess, it's a very esoteric realm, for lack of a better word. And there's a lot of scientific papers that get written, some of which are published on archive, which are not peer reviewed, and others are end up in Nature. So those are the peer reviewed ones. And so for me, coming in as a complete imposter, right? I mean, talk about imposter syndrome. Even though I have a background in, some of the technology, but not all. Like quantum's like a whole different ball game. So for marketers getting up to speed on emerging tech like this, I would say one great use case is to take published papers and run them through your tool and ask questions and ask more questions and ask for definitions. What does that mean? I mean, that's been like I think a really a way to really level up the playing field, equalize the playing field for a lot of newcomers who are emerging in the quantum space, who are not physicists, mathematicians, engineers, but who have marketers and sales folks,
Right.
people who are helping and working in quantum companies but don't have that deep knowledge. This has been extremely helpful. So that's one tip I have.
Well, and I think it's a really important point that you bring up, because one of our very, very important needs is to establish the difference between fact and fiction, right? And we call it hallucination as well. But being able to recognize that.
Oh my gosh. Well, especially in quantum, because there's so much hype and misunderstanding. And so it's really important to for marketers to understand the technology, not oversell it, especially with the propensity for AI to use B2B jargon that's not accurate. I mean, I'd say quantum's it's a harder industry to really work with AI. And unless if you're using it loosely, you need to use it very specifically. But again, going back to understanding papers, it's a starting point for helping to understand what a research paper might be saying and using technical terms.
And, the word misinformation has become very political. So when we talk about misinformation, we're not talking about the political realm of misinformation right now. We're talking about misinformation as it can, the hallucination that you just mentioned, or that I just mentioned, and ultimately really being able to part the seas and understand specifically what is factual and not.
Well, AI can be a starting point, but it's also, as you mentioned, it opens up the necessity for then subject matter experts to really be involved in evaluating whatever the output is, or the claims are, or somebody's other research is,
right,
to that extent. So I just think people in all teams. I think the perfect pairing is, a marketing communications lead with the research lead. And then have a legal person and have a product person, have kind of a core team of people, not too many reviewers, but have a really solid core team of people who can really evaluate these use cases and evaluate the output to make sure that they're valid, clear, concise, not hallucinating, and adhere to the brand message.
Because at the end of the day, it's all about that credible voice and trust that is very, very important to the brand that you're marketing. How, what are some thoughts that you might have around making sure that the brand still sounds credible and trustworthy?
Oh, well, I had this slogan, hire a writer, have a good writer/editor on your team. And just, I don't know, startups, they have to do so much with less. I've seen so many, evidence of generic B2B copy throughout many startups, and evidence is all over LinkedIn. So again, not everybody can afford like a large editorial brand marketing team, but the investment is definitely worth it. So have your brand voice well defined, have your brand expertise, your brand expertise person, have your AI, fed your style guide. Like it all boils down to the style guide, really.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting. I was reading a story earlier today in prepping for the show, and it's a CMO study. It was a joint study between Deloitte Digital and the Conference Board. And they interviewed CMOs across the nation, and Gartner was involved in that as well. Gartner found that 63% of marketing leaders have already invested in AI, and they were planning to completely expound upon that in the future, while the Conference Board found that 87% had already experimented or are investing in it. So AI is absolutely here to stay. It's making us smarter. It's making us we're definitely, I think in some situations, we're working harder to get smarter because it's still that unknown tool. And we're still finding out the right methodologies and the right case studies or use cases, rather, to really help us get there. What advice do you have for teams today that are really trying to differentiate themselves? Let's just give an example at the investment round. They're going after some investment. They want to use AI to make themselves smarter as a part of the presentation, as a part of, a way to right size the market, whatever it might be, as a part of that. What advice do you have for them?
So I'm going to go back to that last piece of advice is really understand your subject matter, first of all, because you want to sound credible, right? You want to sound like you want to have an authoritative voice. So again, using AI to scan the research, scan the market quickly and thoroughly, to give you a baseline of how to communicate to investors. So, and also understanding what the nuances are, right? Covering the nuances is really important, because I see a lot of that lost in the quantum space, for example, especially with startups. So that would be my advice: is get a really good grasp on the market. Don't rely on one source, and use AI as your tool to help ingest a variety of sources, a variety of reports, not just Gartner. There's other analyst reports out there that have maybe different definitions or of quantum, for example, that are more inclusive.
Yeah, I love that. And it, as simple as it sounds, the research side of it is really an incredible benefit at this time and very, very important. So, we definitely have talked about some challenges, but outside, the hallucination and really convincing in an enterprise situation, and even, some smaller organizations, the value of AI, and the data that you can gain from it versus it replacing people. What are some of the additional challenges that our audience needs to be aware of?
So I think a lot of times an organization may adopt a tool, but they don't curate it and they don't educate their workforce enough to really find it useful on a day-to-day basis. So I think constant encouragement of its use cases, managing the use cases, having a council to kind of oversee things, or to provide just a sounding board, a peer support. While I was teaching this course, I think people really benefited from just bringing a use case and like, I have a use case, can I share? And then they get everybody's feedback. So I think having a really open culture for trying things, making mistakes, sharing results, educating each other, having that sort of peer support is really what I would recommend. I know this was really led to our success at VMware. We had a marketing AI council that still kind of lives to this day in another form, but it was really that peer group for learning and sharing information that was really, really critical for our success with AI early on. I mean, this was like 2 years ago now.
And it seems very early for quantum as well. What was one of the most interesting use cases that individuals in that class brought to the table?
I mean, we worked on a town hall where like a new leader was being introduced and had some kind of edgy ideas. And so we really talked about how to monitor your AI prompting and output to make sure you were capturing the nuance, understanding the audience. And so we just got really granular because we were working on DE&I topics. So that was really interesting. Now, going back to a real use case, I think my favorite from my time at VMware was taking several transcripts from customer interviews and then creating a montage based on a narrative that we had created. So we were challenging through creative prompting to identify all the time codes in like 5 different scripts that was talking about the challenge and opportunity of getting your data ready for AI, for example. So, just filtering through so much work. I mean, because that takes hours, scanning through transcripts and highlighting and so I did the manual process of doing that. And then I did it with AI to see how accurate it was. And it was pretty good. It was pretty good.
We did the exact same thing recently, working on a big strategy project for a client. And we did a number of one-on-one interviews, and then we did a market research survey where we got 400 responses. And first off, we took the one-on-one interviews that were all taped, and we had those not prescribed. What am I trying to say?
Transcribed?
Transcribed. Thank you. I'm subscribed, prescribed, transcribed. Oh my gosh. Transcribed word for word. And then we found common themes, positive, neutral, negative. And then we were able to take those insights, develop the strategy. Then just with the one-on-one, then we did the same thing with the survey and mirrored where there was commonality and not. And the output was incredible.
And then you can write up a nice report.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which we did. And the output was absolutely incredible. And that's, again, where I think we're, working smarter, not harder.
Yes.
When it comes to all of this.
But as you mentioned, there's a lot of upfront work. I mean, you have to kind of set up your tools, set up your knowledge base, make sure you have approvers in the mix.
Exactly.
But that you are going to save time down the line, but it's going to end up being better. Better quality overall.
I will say in this situation, the budget for us wasn't, a typical budget as high as it normally would be. And in this situation, it allowed us to stay in budget by using AI.
Oh, that's the dream, right?
Yeah. It allowed us to, and afterwards we did a review of all of our time tracking and all of the AI use. And then we guesstimated that at least an additional 10K of people time would have been needed to do what AI provided us.
Now, it's really heartening to know that you with an agency model have been able to benefit from AI, because I know this has been a kind of a tough question for agencies, whereas they're like, where's my place? How do I add value if things are now moving in-house, which is one of the assumptions of AI, is that, I can do it all myself. I can run all my customer use cases myself. So it's really exciting to hear that you've found ways that you can add even more value to your clients.
Absolutely.
Good job.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important. Any other tips that you want to provide our audience today before we sign off?
Just really push your organization to embrace AI in a useful way. So yeah, we can talk about AI ethics all day long, and that was one of my favorite topics back at IBM. But really, I think it's shifted to a conversation of utility. What's really important, and when it comes to being ethical, it's that how is it really enhancing the brand, right, in an authentic way, as opposed to replacing it with generic B2B copy. So I have a list of words that I have in my style guide that I make sure the AI isn't using. So I've kind of, throughout my couple of years, I've sort of tracked all the words. And so I'm always with my red pen, looking and hunting them down and trying to replace them. So that would be my biggest advice, is make sure you know what's not landing, and that you're really, you're not tone deaf. You really are paying attention to how your copy is landing and how you can make it more reflective of an authentic voice. And that could be hire a writer.
Mm-hmm.
It can be as simple as that.
Yeah, it can be a number of different things. Writers are not going to go out of business.
No, and I think that was the fear, right? And thank God that they're not. And I think we're seeing that more every day, that we are in desperate need for really good copy editors, writers, people with sound editorial judgment, who have a journalistic background, who know how to interview, who know how to think critically. So I would even tell students looking at majors, I'm like, do not skimp on the writing. I'm still learning every day. I feel like writing has become really important. Even though I use AI, I feel really just a passion for the craft, and just I want to get better at it every day.
Yeah, I could not agree more. What is the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
So you can reach me at Jenn, Jenn, at raison-8.com, or you can go to my website for my writing and consultative projects around content and comms at www.raizon-8.com.
Well, Jen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for those contact details. And I look forward to bringing the show forward. Thank you so much for the insights that you provided today. There's just so many point of views right now, and so many tricks to the trade on AI. And I hope listeners that you found this very, very valuable. If you want to go ahead and get a hold of me, please email me, Lori, L-O-R-I, at StrategyCast.com. And while you're there, at StrategyCast.com, don't forget to sign up for the StrategyCast newsletter as well, which comes out every Tuesday along with the show that week, and tons of additional details that will tie into the show. Jen, thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thank you, Lori.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.